Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Halloween Ends. So, I gotta state that I think I made a mistake for Halloween Kills, and so much so that I think I remember also talking about this on the original Halloween review that I did, but I think I can go on and still correct it here, because I'm not going to go on back in that video, because I can't justify that. But in the beginning of Halloween Kills, there's a scene, of course, where there's an ambulance driving, and I think it has Michael Myers' body. And there's also a scene where Laurie is in the back of this truck from some neighbor of hers, and they are driving her to the hospital as quickly as humanly possible. And so Laurie ends up getting to the hospital, ends up getting taken care of, so on and so forth. So, like, I think that's the only mistake that I made about that film. But anyways, now I can just kind of go on and talk about Halloween Ends. So, I feel like Halloween Ends is a better written film than Halloween Kills is. Because Halloween Kills is so freaking boring. But I think the kill scenes are better in Halloween Kills than Halloween Ends, in all honesty. In Halloween Ends, like, we have the stabs that, of course, are more chop, 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 chop kind of things, and I'm like, okay, like, like, this, like, there's nothing creative about this. We're just going on and doing, like, the same old kind of stuff that we've kind of done in the past. And so we have something in the very beginning of this film that kind of really irked the crap out of me for Halloween Ends, is because we not only have a scene that is to really just go on and copy and paste the original film, we then also turn around and we are to do the worst possible thing in a slasher franchise thing, which they go on and they do a recap of what had happened leading up to this moment. I don't care if you could go on and probably even justify the recap for what Laurie is doing in this film. I don't care. In my brain, I'm like, that is the worst thing to do. If I'm ever going to go on and watch this movie again, I'm just going to want to go on and fast forward past the like the stupid recap of this movie. But at least I feel like I can state that, because I don't think it's like giving anything away for the film. So, but now to kind of go on and tee up this story. So, it doesn't feel that Laurie is to be the real focus of this movie again. It feels like we're much more focusing on Allison, who is to, of course, technically be having like a mother-daughter relationship with Laurie, even though it's more of a grand mother and daughter thing. Still, like, there is still to be like a mother-daughter thing going on, even to the point where Laurie is to be dyeing her hair blonde just like her daughter. And so it's like, okay, like, are we really just saying that Laurie is to be Allison's mother replacement? That's horrible to say, but I'm just stating it. It's I'm just being honest. So, but it seems that Laurie, in her travels, is to go on and meet with a kid named Corey, who seems to have one mistake that he is to go on and do follow him for the rest of his life. To the point of then Corey then being a really good candidate for Laurie to say, well, like, I think Allison needs a boyfriend now, and I think I'm going to try to go on and figure out some way for Corey and Allison to be together. And then when we go further and further into this film, we come to find out that Laurie is to finally put pen to paper and document her history of her times going up against Michael, or really just talking about everything that has happened and get it off her chest. And so, but we also have Allison and we have Corey, and everywhere we go, we consistently have these characters as well as Laurie who are going on to be like, hey, aren't you the boogeyman's sister, granddaughter, twice removed, cousin, nephew's brother's uncle? Because we have Laurie, Allison, and Corey all getting that everywhere they go. Like, hey, weren't you the person that did this? Like, we get that a lot through this movie. Consistently, to the point to where we have Allison and Corey who it feels that they are right for one another, but it seems that Corey is spiraling into the wrong direction, and it seems that we may need to go on and have Laurie, and we may need Allison, who could possibly be the people to course correct Corey before it's too late, or maybe we can have Corey who goes too far. And so, with that said, for those of you that have gone on and seen this movie and so on and so forth, like, that's kind of in a vague, but not so vague, sense, what happens within this film. And so, with this also said here, Halloween Ends does also come off as like one of the Friday the 13th movies. If, of course, you were to go on and were to remember Friday the 13th 5, which everyone calls like the chocolate bar movie, and we have like Tommy Jarvis that is beating the crap out of people, and it's freaking awesome. Like, that's the best thing about that film, is when Tommy Jarvis is just beating the crap out of people. But then we also come to find out that the villain, by the end of that story, is to not actually be Jason Voorhees. It seems that it is to go on and be the ambulance driver that is somehow bizarrely tied to a kid who is to be at this camp. And so, like, yeah, I would go on and kind of compare Halloween Ends to that Friday the 13th movie. So, with that said, the grading of this movie, I think that this movie is available on Peacock right now, but I'm going to give you a couple of apps that hopefully you can be able to see this movie without going into Peacock if you don't want to go on and get into the Peacock. So, I would say that Halloween Ends is a solid, good film. Like, at first, I was like, but then once I started to get what the story is in this movie, I'm like, okay, like, I can enjoy this. Like, it's not as many surprises as Halloween 2018 was, but, like, you know what? Like, thumbs up. So, this grading this movie was solid. Was a solid, good film. Surprisingly, even though, like, I feel that 2018 was a great film. But so, with that said, this movie is available on Peacock, but you can also probably go onto an app that I've used frequently called Doxy, Doxcy. It should hopefully have Halloween Ends in there. If not, you can also go on to a Google Play Store and search the words play UHD. So that's two different words. Play UHD. And you'll find an app that Darren Fax has a logo that says Fox HD Movies. Go ahead and download that app, and you should be able to watch Halloween Ends for absolutely free. So, let's go on and let's just go into that double 5 time territory. It's about that time yet again to, of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time to spoil this movie. So, in the beginning of the film, we have Mr. and Mrs. Allen that are to need a babysitter for Jeremy. Sounds familiar, right? A copy and paste of the original Halloween movie. And so they bring in a kid who's called Corey, who of course is this guy. And so we have the Allens going and stating that Corey is really not good with yard work, but it seems that he's also to have a future kind of planned out, going to school and so on and so forth. So we have Mrs. Allen that talks to Corey and states that after what Jeremy has gone on and heard about the boogeyman or Michael Myers, it seems that the Jeremy is to start like speaking to himself, or is to start to have nightmares or something along those lines. We also, when Mrs. Allen is to call for Jeremy, we have the kid who springs out with this werewolf-like mask to scare the crap out of his mother. And so I'm like, what is this, like Friday the 13th, where we have the Tommy Jarvis who goes on and like grabs this mask and scare people? Is that going to be the whole the running joke of this film? But so, anyways, the Allens leave, going on to their Halloween party, and so Corey is to watch after this kid. And interestingly enough, they go on and they watch the John Carpenter The Thing movie, because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this film very well, because of course I went on and saw this movie a long time ago when I was like sweating while watching the film, because I was like, man, like this is really keeping me at the edge of my seat the whole entire time. I was like, man, what a challenge. But I also was to see that recently that like Leviathan was a pretty good match as far as like The Thing is to go on and be. And like I know there's also, if they ever do another Halloween movie, what are they going to do? The Thing from 2011, the other remake, the third remake. Are they going to put that in another Halloween film as a joke? So we have Corey that is realizing that this movie may be too gory for this kid, and so Corey decides to want to do the right thing here and shut this movie off. And Jeremy's like, "No, I want to watch this movie." And so Jeremy's kind of bullying this babysitter because, like, really, this guy doesn't really want to do this job. He's just here to kind of collect this paycheck because it's easy money, and it's not like Corey has anything better to do, sadly enough. So we have Jeremy that is to go on and disappear, and so Corey needs to go on and find out where he is. I think there's a spot where the door is open, and so the front door, and so Corey starts looking around for Jeremy, and we have Corey who goes inside this room to then have Jeremy, my bad, I'm sorry, lock this door behind him, and Jeremy is now like kind of prank Corey here. So Corey, who may go on and like either feel claustrophobic or is to kind of be like afraid of the fact that he's in this dark room. We have Corey who is just trying to bang against this door to try and get it opened. because he's trying to tell Jeremy, it's like, well, hey, like, the fun's over, like, come on. So Jeremy continues to try to bang against this door to try to get it open. And come to find out, what ends up happening is the Allen family comes home right as this door is to finally get open, and this ends up knocking off Jeremy to have him fall down this flight of stairs, and Jeremy's neck or possibly portions of his body are to all break here. So the Allens come home to find their son dead in front of them. And so now some time has passed, oddly enough. So we now have to go on and do the recapping of every single Halloween film in the beginning of Halloween Ends. So I'm not going to go on and recap all that. Like, really, you can go on and watch every single Halloween movie before you really get to this one. And, like, you would be better off. Or you can skip certain films, because this Halloween franchise is to have a number of different retcons going on. It's basically the Terminator Dark Fate way of doing things, as I like to just state here. And so you can watch the first two Halloween films, and then you could go on and watch, like, Halloween 2018, and it feels all smoothly connected. So you can watch 5 movies instead of, what is there, like 10, 15? Whichever, I don't remember. There's so many of them. There's even like Halloween H2O and everything. The Rob Zombie Halloween films, the remake, which a lot of people don't like for whatever reason. I haven't even gone on and fully watched those films. I think I've always kind of started watching one of them, but I never fully committed to watching those. So, with that said, we find out that Laurie is typing all of these pages out to finally go on and do a biography of her life and what she has gone on to deal with. So we, of course, have Laurie that goes on after giving us this story. We also find out that Allison has been living with Laurie, and at some point Laurie is to give Allison the wedding rings of her parents. And I was like, okay, like, is that a little weird to not have the wedding rings be like left with her parents? Like, I'm a little weirded out by that. But anyways, so, but it's a memento, and everybody has their way of just kind of dealing with grief and so on and so forth. So Laurie goes on to try and make an actual pie for Allison, and Laurie realizes that the fire alarm is going off. Both Laurie and Allison are scrambling to smack a broom against this smoke detector, and Laurie is to realize that now, like, this pie that I'd made is all burnt and ruined. And so, because Laurie wanted to make one homemade for Allison, so come to find out, it's been 4 years since Michael Myers has gone on and struck. So it seems that Laurie probably has gone on and, like, not as been well trained as she has in previous films, and kind of letting things go because she maybe can finally just think that all is over finally. Some relief. So Laurie is to go to this grocery store to try and get certain specific items, and come to find out she ends up bumping into Frank, the guy that she had spent some hospital bedtime with in the previous film. So we have Laurie and we have Frank, and so it seems that Frank is going on and doing some mixed meats for the guys at the station. And Laurie's like, "Well, have you ever heard of a vegetable?" And so Laurie ends up tossing him a can of like vegetables, like, "Hey, like that'll do you some good." So while Laurie and Frank are kind of checking out, it seems like they're checking one another out. Because we have Laurie who is to state to Frank that she's going on and writing now because she ended up getting inspired by Frank to do so. And so both of them go on to start talking about these cherry blossoms, and like it seems that Laurie is to state that it's like it's really good seeing you again, and like it really feels like they're gonna do something with these two, but uh it doesn't quite, to maybe the end of the film, seem like they're going somewhere with this. But so if Laurie may be connected to Frank, so we have a kid named Corey, and so Corey, it seems, is crazily trying to bike his way to his job, which is to be owned by a guy named Ronald. Coincidentally, Corey is to bike like crazy to his work, and Ronald is to tell Corey, "Hey, you're late again." Come to find out, Ronald is actually Corey's father, so it doesn't really matter. It's not like Corey is going to get fired, and so I think maybe Corey might just go on and see that as like, "Dude, you're not gonna fire me. I'm your son. What are you gonna do?" So Ronald then goes on and is to have this motorcycle that Corey can fix up, that he can go on and use, so that way at least he'll have a engine, so he can possibly make his way to work a lot quicker. So Corey at one point is to uh, go on and get some milk, and is to leave, I think, this gas station. And so Corey is just kind of leaving to go home. We all of a sudden have these high schoolers that are all marching band characters, which is kind of interesting to see where this all leads. Uh, but still, so we have these kids, and so Terry, it seems, is to be out of this group, the one who keeps pinging on Corey more so than all the rest. It seems that all the rest are just kind of to, I guess, have to back up what Terry says, but also they're just like, yeah, maybe this is a mistake. But so Terry is to ask Corey about getting them alcohol because, like, they've had a long day and, like, they'll give this guy money to do it. And Corey is just like, well, no. And they're like, really? Like, come on. And then all of a sudden, they then realize that Corey is to be the guy who had killed the one kid. And we find out at some portion in this movie, Corey's mother is to state to Laurie that because Michael Myers, who was the boogeyman, had left, the town desperately needed to go on and find some boogeyman, and Corey had to be it. So I thought that whole line was like, oh my god, this is awesome. Because thinking about it, it's like, well, yeah, like every town needs a pariah. And so when really looking at it, just Corey is to be that guy, sadly enough. So Corey is to go on and accidentally like start to get upset and start to get angry with these guys who are consistently calling him names, to where Corey goes on and is to accidentally break a bottle of his milk. And when these guys go on to try and shove Corey, Corey falls back and has his glass land into his hand. So Corey, who doesn't want to really go on and fight these guys or whichever, we then have Laurie come in, and Laurie ends up going on and like kind of cursing them out and trying to get them to go away. So when they do, we have Laurie who kind of dusts off Corey and is to like say to him, it's like, are you gonna do it or am I gonna have to? Because Laurie busts out this knife and they end up popping this guy's tire and they walk away. We'll find out later that these same people are going to go to Corey's shop to get this new tire, but still. So Corey is to be with Laurie and is to kind of toss this bike because the motorcycle isn't ready yet. For this guy to go to the hospital to get his hand checked. So Laurie is to dump this kid off to go on and have her be looked after, him be looked after by Allison. And so Allison is to be this nurse, yeah, and we also have this doctor who's going on, and Dr. Mathis, who is taking out this this glass and giving this guy a numbing agent. So come to find out, Dr. Mathis is just a really bad doctor, but he blames everything on Allison for his mess ups, for his fudging. So when Dr. Mathis leaves, we have Allison and Corey who are talking to one another. And so while they're talking, it seems that Allison and Corey become quick friends. And so we also start to have Allison realize that Laurie was trying to set this up all along. Because, of course, when Laurie is to find out about a person in town who is to kind of get a bad reputation, but he's a good person, we then have Laurie who's like, oh, okay, well, like, I'm going to find this kid because so that way, like, my Allison has somebody that is just like her, who, like, they're both going through the same thing and they could be perfect for one another. So we come to find out have Allison who is having problem with her car to the point of her getting pulled over by the police. And we of course have this officer who goes on to, and I want to try to get this guy's name right because at some point he ends up getting to be a bigger part in this movie. I think it, of course, is to be Officer Mullaney? Officer Mullaney, I believe is his name. So we push on here, and so Allison and Corey are to become quick friends, and we even have them texting at one point, and Allison is stating like, hey, you and me should go out and just kind of do something, as Corey is to kind of have like scuff on his coat, as he immediately tries to go on and fix Allison's car right then and there, but he doesn't have the tools to. So Corey's just telling Allison to drop it off at the place where he works and he'll fix it because it's an easy fix. So Corey then goes home, and it seems that his mother is just yelling at him about his injury, and so we have Corey that is to go on and get this text from Allison, and we have Corey's mother that is like asking, like, hey, what are you doing? And Corey's like, well, I'm just texting someone. And considering this guy does this, Corey's mother is to state, it's like, well, hey, like you shouldn't be hiding anything. And so Corey's like, God, like, privacy much? Like, God, just like I can't do anything without you guys knowing about it. So we go on to have Corey and Allison, who's to, of course, start to become an item. And so this all leads to them at some point going on to this Halloween party. And so they're going to this Halloween party that's not actually on Halloween. So they go to this bar that, of course, is Lindsay's, who, of course, you can probably have remembered her from Halloween Kills or the original Halloween, because it's, of course, the same exact actor or actress. So Lindsay is still in this bar, and it seems that she's also doing tarot cards. There's one point where Lindsay does a tarot card for Allison, and she ends up getting the death card, which Allison has realized, like, oh my god, I got the death card, and we have Lindsay who's like, well, that's not what that means. And of course, I've gone and I've done a little bit of research on tarot cards, and I found out that, like, death doesn't actually mean death. What death actually means is that you're kind of stopping something and going through like a drastic change. So it's kind of like a rebirth to kind of change where you're heading. And so, like, that could be a good thing. A death card but could be a good thing. Kind of like certain other cards have like certain kinds of double meanings. And so that I thought is always kind of interesting about tarot cards. So, and I think that Lindsay tries to explain that in this movie, but anyways. So, but now we go to this Halloween party, and oh, we also had like Allison, who is to talk to Lindsay, like, yeah, Laurie set me up with Corey, and Laurie's like, well, yeah, like it seems like it seems that they're a perfect match. He's a good guy. So, but at some point when Laurie goes and talks more with Corey's mother, we start to find out more and more that this guy is going through some real hardships. And so on and so forth. So we have Allison and we have Corey, who make their way to this Halloween party, and when Corey and Allison are letting loose, dancing on the dance floor, having a good time, and like, I'm not going to go on and grade or critique their dancing. It's just they're having fun. Good for them. And so we have Allison going as this cat, and Corey's going as this scarecrow because it's two easy costumes that's, of course, cheap to make. So anybody will probably just go on and probably go as those costumes from Halloween because it makes the most sense. So, because they're cheap and easy to make. So, after Corey's to go on and take off his scarecrow mask and make it to the bar to order another drink, all of a sudden, we of course have Mrs. Allen that is to see Corey and just be like, oh, well, you're going out there and dancing and having a good time when every single day, like, I have to think of my dead son and so on. And we have this woman escalate and escalate to where Corey is just wanting to get out of there, like, really create distance. And so when Allison comes out to be like, hey, Corey, where are you going? Corey, of course, is to like, hey, I'll spare you the trouble, like, because everywhere I go, like, this one mistake that I did is following me everywhere, and so like, I'm gonna like leave you before like it really like is to sink in about that. So I'm paraphrasing, but anyway, so Corey leaves. We also had the scene where Corey was teaching Allison how to ride a motorcycle, and Allison ends up getting confused about riding a motorcycle as Corey was to go on and explain it while they were at uh, Corey's like repair shop or place that they were like fixing things slash junkyard, because it looks like there was a junkyard also. But anyways, so we have Corey that at some point is to walk away from Allison because he doesn't have his motorcycle, and so Allison drove. So Corey is just walking home, and we all of a sudden again have the marching band kids meet up with Corey. And so now these kids are trying to state that it's like, well, hey, we want to just have like bygones be bygones, let's shake hands, yada yada yada. But again, they can't let it go that this guy is still to be like the baby killer or the pedophile or whatever that they end up stating here. So this just escalates and escalates more to Terry just deciding to chuck Corey off this bridge. And so he falls, and they're thinking like, oh my god, he could be dead. And Terry's just stating like, oh no, he slipped. It was an accident. And like, they're like, no, like he obviously fell and he's probably dead. So now we have this homeless person that is underneath this bridge. And so what happens is that Corey ends up getting dragged into this little pipe that leads to this underground location. And so when Corey wakes up with all these rats being around him, like, what the heck is going on? Corey then tries to get out of this location to be grabbed by the neck by none other than Michael Myers, grabbing onto him, choking him. And so when Myers is to look further and further into Corey's eyes, there's something about them where it seems that both of them have the same eyes, to where it seems we have Michael that loosens his grip to let Corey go. It's like, oh wow, like, okay, so they're one and the same. So Corey is to go on and realize, he's like, well, wait a minute, like, I have Michael Myers here. I can go on and like have a veteran guy like show me how killing works, show me how being a slasher character works. So we turn around and have Corey going to Allison for his wounds, and so Allison continues to take care of him, and we start to have Corey's mother that starts to get more and more upset because Corey is always gone. And he's gone off to be with Allison, and at some point it is to like build up to that Corey and Allison are going to sleep with one another. But so we take off here to have Corey and Allison going to this diner. And come to find out, we have this officer again who is kind of not in his gear, his outfit, his whatever. And he is to bump back into Allison and be like, oh, hey, yeah, like, and this guy had gone on and tried to hit on Allison a number of times, and Allison just wasn't buying it. And so now that Allison finds, or this officer finds both Allison and Corey, who are both together, now this guy is jealous. So now we go on and have this officer that is turning around and now, like, again, pointing out to everyone in this diner, causing a scene, stating who both of these characters both are. That Allison is just as crazy as her, killer, Michael Myers, and that also Corey is to be this kid killer who should have gone on and went to jail for this. So we again have these characters that are so upset, but they then realize that they are to find one another and like even connect even more so, because both of them are kind of dealing with this every single time. So even to the point where both Allison and Corey go to this radio station to go onto the roof, and Corey just starts to go on and start dropping from this building from like a pretty decent height. And Allison had asked Corey, it's like, well, hey, like, shouldn't you like be more like cautious about safety? And Corey's like, well, hey, I have no worries of whether or not I'm going to ever become immortal. So Corey ends up jumping off this roof and he ends up falling pretty decently, but he's okay. So we then have the DJ who ends up coming out of like, hey, aren't you? So it's like same old song and dance all over again. And so we have Corey who's like, God, I just hate like that this follows me around. So we then go on to, after Corey and Allison have significantly spent some time together, we have Corey who is even like tempted to go with Allison to sleep with her, but Corey is like, not tonight. So Corey instead is to drive off, having this officer follow him all the way to this specific location where Corey is really baiting this guy to where Michael Myers is to be. So since this detective wants to go on and probably kill off Corey, because otherwise why is he going his way here, Corey goes into that little pipe to get to where Michael Myers is, and so this guy follows him. And so we have this detective asking for where this guy is, and so that, of course, gears up for Corey to grab this guy and have Michael show him how to kill this guy. And so Michael starts slicing him up, knifing him quite a bit of time, and so Corey's like, alright, like, okay. So After killing this guy off, Corey rushes back to Allison's place and is to not quite know who he is anymore. And so we have Corey that goes on to like touch onto Allison, and this continues to lead for them to go into bed with one another. Laurie, who drives in to see both of them going on and doing this, is like, okay, like I'll give them their privacy, their space, and just kind of let them go on to do what they're gonna do. And we have Michael Myers, who is in the background in the brush, looking on at Laurie. We also had the first time when Corey really wanted to go on and talk to Allison. He ends up doing the same thing that Myers did, and Corey is by this kind of brush, just kind of waiting and looking at the house. And Laurie is to see Corey doing this, and so Laurie then goes out there to see Corey. It's like, oh, hey, yeah, like I just want to talk to Allison, because like I feel like we have a connection or something along those lines. So like this movie comes off as like a romance almost, but a romance that doesn't quite pan out. So we have Laurie that is starting to more and more realize, the more that she starts to see Corey, and the more that she looks into his eyes, the more that she's starting to realize that Corey is to have the exact same eyes that Myers did. And so, and also when Laurie is to do her due diligence to talk to Corey's mother and throw the fact that, like, well, hey, since Myers was gone, Corey became the new boogeyman. Corey became the guy that everyone had to point out and state who he was. A simple mistake, which ruined his whole entire life. And like there was a whole thing about the officer going on and talking about manslaughter and so on and so forth. So Laurie is to go on to trying to talk to Allison about Corey, and is to state that she this could be like love, but again she no longer likes Corey. So there's a whole back and forth about that. There has to be the traditional like mother and father kind of thing, the unaccepting parent for the relationship, and that just makes, of course, Allison want to be with Corey even more so. And we just get to a point where Allison was supposed to get this job promotion, and come to find out, instead, we go on and have Deb, who is to get this job instead. Deb was to also go on and give Allison her cat costume for Halloween. So, come to find out, the reason why Deb had even gotten this promotion is it seems that Dr. Mathis had been sleeping around with one of his nurses, that coinkydinkley ends up being Deb. So, we see this happen in this film where both Dr. Mathis and Nurse Deb are now at this home together, going into a possible situation where they're going to sleep with one another. So then we go on to have both Corey and both Michael Myers, who are both going in and killing these two people off. And so we have Corey, who is donning his scarecrow mask and stabbing multiple times into the doctor, while we, of course, have Myers, who is lifting this girl up to stab her onto this wall to leave her hanging there, like, of course, we've seen in the original Halloween from before. Like the guy who's just kind of hanging on the wall. I think he had glasses, and whatever he ends up being the ghost guy in the film, in the original one. We also had a photo of Laurie kind of looking on the original girls and like, oh, that's nice to kind of like, hey, we're definitely going to try to remember those girls even though they're dead, just as like a like, hey, like they were in there briefly. um but I know a lot of the girls who went on and did the original film are always willing to go on and do like interviews just kind of talking about the films, and that's always really cool. And to kind of like be asking them, it's like, man, do you really think that this movie would go on and like stand the test of time? And also like, hey, like for the scenes of which that you did, and like they've done interviews. I've heard them at some at certain points. So, anyways, pushing on. So after that kill, after those kills, we then go on to really just have Corey kind of take control over the Michael Myers persona. And so Corey just goes on and is back in that like pipe, in that underground place, and Corey just takes off Myers's mask and starts to get his own slasher justice from people that have gone on and wronged him. So we go to have Corey, who is to put the word psycho over the marching band kid's car, and so they end up following him to the place where he worked. And we go on to have Corey that is to take this tow truck and ram to this gate, which of course ends up taking one of the girls down, stuck into this cage. But then all the other characters ends up going on to start to get slowly but surely killed. One, of course, by this massive wrench, and we also have, how does I know there's usually a case where I forget how someone dies. Billy, how does he end up getting killed? I'm not quite sure. So so we go on and we have Terry, and he is now talking to Margot, and Margot is stating that Terry is going to get killed next because Michael Myers is behind him, or Corey in this case. And because Terry was to have Ronald, or let's back up here. Ronald was to see what was going on, and that he had noticed a number of people getting killed at his place of work as he's kind of working late. So we have Ronald that comes out and is trying to see what's going on, and Terry ends up having this gun and ends up shooting Ronald in the head by accident, trying to kill Myers. And so that's, of course, when Terry runs up on one of the girls, and she states that Terry's going to get killed next, and so he does. And then he ends up getting welded in the face and killed. We also had the moment where Frank was to, throughout the years, trying to figure out whether Michael Myers was back doing what he was doing. But every kill was to not be the right kill. At some point, there is to be a use of guns, and Frank is like, well, no, it can't be Myers. Like, he uses, like, of course, kitchen knives and blades and whatever, because heaven forbid you go on to have this character use much else. Like, we haven't had him explore or experiment quite like Voorhees has gone on and done throughout his time. And because I kind of briefly watched some of those Friday the 13th again, and so I was like, oh yeah, like he ends using like gardening shears and all these kinds of things. So we after Corey's to go on and kill all of these people, he then turns around and is to go back to his own home and kills off his own mother. So that goes on to pushing us further to, while Allison is at work, we have Corey calling her, and Corey is stating that him and Allison are going to have to run away together because there's like a whole reason for for that, because Corey, of course, is to go on to the house that he had killed this kid in and had shown Allison this house and had told her the whole story. And that, of course, made Corey and Allison even closer. And so when now Corey is sleeping in that home, Laurie is there, and she is to consistently smack this chair against this wall and be talking to Corey. And the first thing that she ends up stating is like the two different kinds of killers, where we of course have the one that is like forever changed and like is to just start killing, or the kind that seems to have an infection and they don't even realize it. So while Corey is to say to Laurie, it's like, well, hey, like, if Allison can't have me, then like then she'll never get anyone else, because of course like everyone else is going to see Allison as the is related to the boogeyman. So there's no way that Allison is ever going to be with someone, sadly enough. So Corey is to really just kind of lay it on thick that it's like, well, hey, like, whatever you're gonna do, like, it's not gonna work, no matter what you can say to her, like, and so we then have Corey making that phone call to Allison that they need to run away together, and Allison's like, okay, all right. So we have Corey that goes on and is to now need to go after Laurie to finish things up. So that way there's nothing stopping Corey and Allison. And so Corey is going on and going after Laurie. So we have Laurie that goes on to realize that she has finished up this book, that Allison is now like leaving, and there's nothing that Laurie can say to change that. So Laurie is to now go on and call the police and state that there is going to be a self-harming incident. So because Laurie in her book is to talk about the cherry blossoms or self-harming herself or self-killing herself. And so now it seems to, at this point, be all coming to a head. So we see from another person's perspective, which of course is supposedly Corey's, we have Laurie that goes on to light this jack-o'-lantern and is to then take this gun and fire a bullet, and we're like, oh my god, Laurie killed herself. What? But then all of a sudden, when Corey comes in, we then have Laurie is like, oh, did you think that I would really go on and kill myself? Ah ha ha ha, like, gotcha. So we have Laurie fighting off Corey here to the point of course, Laurie firing numerous shots into, of course, Corey here. Corey falls, and we then have Laurie, who is to want to go on and figure out whether or not she should kill Corey or not, or try and save him, to try and do the right thing here. So we have Corey, who realizes he may die. So Corey then is to tell Laurie, it's like, well, if I can't have her. And then Corey stabs into his own neck and he falls over. And so Allison is to be like, oh my god, thinking that Laurie was to go on and kill Corey here. And Laurie ends up pulling the knife out of Corey, and it looks like she did this. So Allison is like, oh my god, Laurie. So Laurie's like, oh no, you don't understand. You don't get the context. You didn't see the other scene. You didn't see what all played out. So now we're thinking of like, well, where the is Michael? Where is Myers? Where the is this guy? So Allison runs off, and so Laurie is now like kind of by herself. She still has this gun, and so she might be thinking about going on and pulling the trigger this time around, even though she has no bullets left, because Allison is to go on and empty the chamber of this gun, as we see her fire numerous times to make sure that the gun is empty. So we now have Laurie without bullets in her gun, and the other Michael arrives. And so we have Laurie and Michael duking it out, so to speak. And so if we just don't have Michael, who just continue just to like to choke people. So we have Laurie and Michael, and they're fighting knife for knife, as it's like the race to get to all these kitchen knives. And Laurie's to have a whole drawer prepared for all these kitchen knives. So, like, I'm like, okay, like, this is cool, because, like, you know, obviously, like, only Laurie would know where the kitchen knives are, and that's, like, a smart idea, instead of having the kitchen knives just open where anyone can just go on and grab it. How convenient or stupid is that usually in every single horror film? So we have one knife that goes into Michael's hand, and so Laurie then gets the other kitchen knife to go into Michael's hand and hits it with this pan. And then Laurie kind of pulls this refrigerator. I'm like, holy like, Laurie is freaking strong. Like, how is it that she could just easily tip over this freaking fridge? Like, for me, like, I can go on and, like, tip over a fridge, but I would need to, of course, set it up where I would have, like, my, like, I would have my foot near the fridge, and I would have to use my foot as, like, leverage to kind of tip it over. But still, like, that just seems very far-fetched for that fridge to just, like, fall the way it does so easily, because fridges are freaking heavy. And of course, I would, of course, know, but why am I even talking about this? This is, like, stupid things to cover here. But that's the one thing I was like, wait a minute, like, that fridge was too easy to fall over. She must have had a really light fridge. Anyways, why am I complaining? So, so we go on. I just realized that I accidentally was like, oh, maybe I don't need the credits. And I was like, oh, yeah, I technically do. So, we have Laurie that is to start, like, putting the knives into Myers. And so now we have Myers that is fighting back. He ends up getting one of his hands free. And so Allison comes in and is like, well, hey, I'm not gonna like let you grandma or Laurie go out like this. So Laurie just snaps Myers' arm. I'm like, yeah, all right. So we have Laurie who just cuts open uh, Myers' arm to just let him bleed out as if he's really going to die that way. It's freaking Myers. You gotta go on and like figure out a way to like acid this guy and hope that like the whatever is left from all of that is to not come back and reanimate or some goofy thing. Because there's been too many times where there's been these slip ups, there's been these little stupid little things. That is to say, it's like, oh, that wasn't the real Michael Myers. Like, over time, I would just find that to be ridiculous. Honestly, how they could go on and make another movie is to say that it's not Michael anymore, and they could probably go on and just say that it's Corey, and that Corey is going to go on and be the new Michael Myers, but that just uh, like then we would need to have like a legitimate name for the Michael Myers character instead of just Michael Myers, because if it's somebody different every time, then should we say the Kirk mask? The Kirk mask killer. No, that's stupid. Uh, what would it be then? Let me know in the comments below. The onesie killer? Those names sound really stupid, but it's like, hey, like, what else are they gonna do? The kitchen knife killer? That would work. The boogeyman? They've gone on to technically call him that, even though it's like boogeyman. That like, I guess you can go on and just say like every time the killer is the boogeyman, and you don't know who it is, but still. So I don't think you would call like the boogeyman, but like funny enough, I think Michael Myers in this movie is to be called the Shape. I think, weirdly enough, I don't know why. So we have all the cops that come in and they're looking over Michael's body. They're like, okay, he's definitely dead this time around. And so Laurie's like, well, I want to let the town know that he's for sure dead. And I want to make sure that everybody who's to have ever gone on and had a family member being lost from Michael Myers, they're going to get they're going to get their like revenge, and they're going to see him die. So, because Laurie is to go on, and after she goes grocery shopping, we have this one woman who's like, hey, what'd you get in there? And Laurie's like, wait a minute, what? And then the woman is to start to state that she, of course, is to be tied to a family member who had dealt with Myers, and that Laurie is to have been the cause of all that. And because Laurie had wanted Myers released to try and finally kill him off, because Laurie is so afraid every single year that Myers will somehow come back. And so Laurie could have possibly gone on to plan Michael coming back to have eventually a killing spree upon her neighborhood. So we have all the people that are kind of hoisting up Myers' body to then toss him into this grinder. And so we are supposed to assume that now Myers is dead, which means nothing to me. It means nothing. I don't know how many times we can go on and kill this character off. It's still, he's going to come out of it somehow. He's going to come back to life. He's going to be like the Wolverine of, or the Deadpool of slashers. They're going to come up with some other goofy film that is to be some like crossover. It's like, oh no, Myers is back, or Corey is back, or somebody is to be now this killer. and it'll still be a franchise. They'll still go on with it. So they should honestly give us who the name of the killer is in the title, like Halloween Boogeyman or something, to just like, oh, okay, all right. So we have certain cops and certain officers who are to feel like they should not go on and do what Laurie's going to do with this body. And Sheriff Barker is like, no, like, we're definitely going to do this because it's the right move, it's the right call. Because, like, we're all going to want to make sure that this guy is dead finally. So, like, there is not going to be any jury execution or nothing. It's just even though this character's already dead, still, like, we're gonna reconfirm that he's dead this time around. But they'll make another one. They'll reboot it. They'll do whatever they need to do. They'll just keep going. They'll just like, man, like, how can you not just like not keep going on with that money? So we have Myers get killed or get crushed, grinded up. And so now we have Laurie who is kind of nursing her wounds, and Laurie and Allison's relationship has never been stronger because, of course, Allison is now to realize that, like, what Corey had did and, like, the people that he had killed. And it was like, yeah, like, I realized that you were just trying to do what you were trying to do to help me, to benefit me. So we have Laurie that goes on and is to see Frank, who drops off a plethora of vegetables. And so now Laurie is asking Frank what he meant about the cherry blossoms. And so both Laurie and Frank just start sitting down together. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Like, giving us some hope that Laurie and Frank here are going to work things out. So by that ends up kind of just wrapping up this movie in a nice, neat little bow. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I did forget about, because I'm sure that there might be. I know there was a plethora of certain little things that I probably didn't get into, or I had to re-go back into because I forgot about them, or there's just a lot of stuff to go in here, or I didn't do it perfectly. But either way, I'm just going to get out of here and say thanks for watching, for anyone who is to go on and do so. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.